American soccer fans, welcome to episode 137 of the USA Soccer Cast. We are bringing you everything about the U.S. national teams, the players, the leagues, and everything else that impacts the game of soccer in these United States. I'm Donald Wine, and what can I say? The United States are out of the 2024 Copa America. They crash out in the group stage after a 1-0 loss last night to Uruguay in Kansas City. The loss completed a group stage that saw the U.S. men's national team beating Bolivia 2-0 in their first match, only to lose to Panama 2-1 in the second match before the loss to Uruguay. And there's just so much that we can talk about with this tournament, these matches, and the state of the program after this tournament. So we're going to break it up. We're going to talk about the state of the United States men's national team after the break and whether a change should be made at the head coaching position. Let's first talk about these three group stage matches. The first match was the Bolivia match, and there was a lot of optimism entering that match, even despite losing to Colombia and drawing Brazil in the lead up to the Copa America tournament. Bolivia was the worst team in the group. They only had 2 wins in 2 years, and the hope was that the United States would just outclass them all day long. And while they didn't run Bolivia off the field, they had what I thought was a pretty good showing. Christian Pulisic scores early on for the United States, and that probably calmed the nerves somewhat on the squad. Flair Balogun added another one, and while the United States couldn't find additional goals, I thought it was still a pretty good showing. They walked in the Jerry World, they played pretty well, they got the 3 points, and it was off to Atlanta. They move on to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta to take on Panama, who they had lost to in the 2023 Gold Cup semifinals. In the lead up to that match, the story was if the team was ready to take on one of the teams that is the most CONCACAF-y, the ones that do anything and everything to get the result. And at a press conference a couple of days before that match, I asked Tim Weah and Matt Turner directly if they were prepared to have to play CONCACAF-y against Panama. And Weah assured everyone that they were ready for it. He said they just needed to play their game, but they were ready to take the game to the mud if they needed to. Matt Turner reiterated that in an interview with the lovely Jenny Taft the very next day, and the team seemed to be prepared for a match that was not wide open, but would be full of the gamesmanship that defines some of the matches played on this continent. They were prepared, they knew what to expect, and that's why it was shocking that Tim Weah got a red card early in the match for punching a Panamanian player in the back of the head, and the team had to play down a man for a very long time. Balogun still scored anyway, just a couple of minutes after that, and you felt like maybe they would be able to hold on. But Panama scores a few minutes later to level it, and the gamesmanship continued. Matt Turner had suffered an injury, which was related to Tim Weah's retaliation on a foul that wasn't called. He has to sub off at halftime, and Ethan Horvath comes on. The team just couldn't put anything together, and they couldn't hold Panama. Panama scores again late, and despite Panama picking up a straight red of their own, the U.S. couldn't get the equalizer in the final few minutes. They lose, and now they had a problem. Because not only were they not in a position to win the group after Uruguay pummeled Bolivia, they now have to beat Uruguay and hope that Panama doesn't torch Bolivia in match 3. So that brings us to last night. USA-Uruguay in Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium. The team knew they had to score goals and win, but they just couldn't do much on goal. We lose Flair Balogun late in the first half. He got clipped several times, some of them on fouls that weren't called, and was too injured to continue. And they also had to see what Panama was doing against Bolivia. And Panama's up 1-0, right when Bolivia leveled the score in the middle of the second half at 1-1. Giving the U.S. a chance, seconds later, we give up a goal in the corner kick. Everyone told me it was offside. The camera angles we saw in the stadium showed the player being offside. The referee in the middle, though, who was atrocious all game long, signals for a goal, and VAR allows it to stand. Absolute gut punch. A few minutes later, Panama in their match scores again to make it 2-1, and us fans then knew that the writing was on the wall. The match finishes 0-1, and for the first time since Copa America started having a fixed host in group stage in 1987, a Copa America host has failed to make it out of the group stage, and that host is the United States. Not the type of history that you're seeking. It's a terrible end to a tournament that was viewed as a measuring stick to see where the United States men's national team was in their progress towards co-hosting the 2026 World Cup. Well, the measure is our team isn't as good as we thought it would be. And it's leaving everyone asking themselves questions. How do we fix it? What needs to change? Who needs to change? We're going to try and answer some of these questions, but first, let's take a quick break. The current state of the United States men's national team program after this.
Hey everyone, are you looking for the latest gear for your U.S. national teams, Major League Soccer, the NWSL, or any other team in the world of soccer? The USA Soccercast has affiliate partnerships that are ready to help you out. Head to linktree.com/USA Soccercast, where we have links to Homage, Fanatics, the MLS store, and Breaking Team. You can get the jersey, shirt, hat, or accessory you're looking for to support your team, while also saving some money and helping this show in the process. Again, linktree.com/USA Soccercast. Click on the links and get your gear. And we thank you as always for your support of the show.
We are back, and now that the United States is out of Copa America, the program has a lot of answers facing it. As I mentioned before the break, some of those questions are, how do we fix this? What needs to change? Who needs to change? And how do we rebuild the progress meter as we are less than 2 years away from co-hosting the 2026 World Cup? And the biggest question on the block is a change needed at the head coaching position? So let's start with the biggest elephant in a room full of elephants, and that is whether or not a head coaching change is necessary to help us achieve our goals. I will start with this. I've never been a Berhalter out guy. I'm not a Berhalter in guy necessarily, but I think during the course of the first 4 years he was in charge, he did a pretty good job and accomplished all the goals that this program had. He rebuilt the player pool. We started destroying Mexico in every major match we started destroying Mexico in every major match we played against them, including winning Nations League. He got us qualified for the World Cup, and we went and we got out of the group there. We've won a ton of recruiting battles when it comes to dual nationals, and the entirety of the major core of players all play in Europe. So he's done a lot. And these players have done a lot. And even before the off-field drama involving the Renas, I said on this show that I didn't think Gregg Berhalter should stick around for a second cycle, mainly because history showed us that second cycle coaches rarely work out. You need a change of ideas, fresh tactics, and a new voice in the locker room to motivate the players to succeed. But they went with Gregg after a 6-month saga that drew out and included the hiring of a new sporting director in Matt Crocker, who ultimately reviewed the candidates and decided Gregg Berhalter was the right choice to lead this team into the World Cup. I've never been gung-ho Berhalter in, but I've also, again, have not been Berhalter out. My thing was always centered around the fact that he's our coach, and we should support the coach and the players and the team, and we should always root for their success. A large group of fans have never seen it that way, and I've seen people hope we lose so Berhalter could get fired, whether it's because they erroneously linked his brother Jay, who was working for U.S. Soccer at the time Gregg was hired, to Berhalter winning the job. Jay Berhalter was involved in the hiring, and he left U.S. Soccer over 4 years ago. But people continue to use that in their criticism. People note his record against top teams and then exclude Mexico whenever that is brought up, like beating Mexico wasn't one of the main goals of this fan base just a little bit ago. They question the tactics and the subs, and sure, there are valid criticisms there. But overall, the mantra, players win, coaches lose, has been on full display during every United States men's national team match since Gregg Berhalter took over. If the team wins 7-0, the story was that Gregg prevented it from being 10 with his tactics. If we lose because of a terrible performance, Gregg is assigned 110% of the blame by the fan base, even if the players come out and say, hey, that's on us. We didn't play well. Some people even went so far as to blame Gregg Berhalter for Tim Weah's red card against Panama, saying that he didn't prepare the team for the CONCACAFing. And even as I mentioned during the break, Weah was asked by me directly what they planned to do, and he said they were ready for Panama to play like that. Matt Turner said they were ready for it. Players making terrible mistakes on the field that led to goals were attributed to Gregg's tactics instead of allowing the players to share blame for it. A lot of the criticism of Gregg Berhalter has been completely unfair, and it's brought on by the fans who just don't want him to be the coach and will stop at nothing until that happens. Now that I said that, let me say this. When we previewed the group stage of Copa America, I said that I was showing my optimism when I believed that the United States could win the tournament. I also said that if we fail to make it out of the group stage, U.S. Soccer had to have the conversation about whether a head coaching change is necessary. And I believe we're at that moment. Again, it's not anything against Gregg. In fact, I don't think many of the problems we saw displayed in the group stage can be considered Gregg's fault if you look at it objectively. The red card wasn't his fault. The mistakes weren't his fault. The terrible referee in the Uruguay match certainly wasn't his fault. The play of the players isn't his fault. But failing to get out of the group at a major tournament is something that coaches get fired for. And that's where we're at. It's time to make a change. But the changes can't just be made at the head coaching position. I have a feeling that a lot of people who were Berhalter out could be ecstatic if the news comes down that he was fired. But will we be like the dog when it finally catches his tail? Now what? In a review of the program, the U.S. Soccer Federation and U.S. soccer fans must be realistic about what the course should be and who we bring in. People were upset at Gregg Berhalter for struggling during World Cup qualifying and failing to beat the top teams in the world not named Mexico. They say we played too many CONCACAF teams in friendlies and not enough matches against the top teams of the world so we can test ourselves against better competition. Never mind the fact that UEFA Nations League and other competitions, including World Cup qualifying, have precluded some of the best teams from being available. But I can say this objectively. We got CONCACAF in this tournament, and then we got CONMEBOL. Both occurred because we did not have a team that could withstand both. Because if only one is withstood, we're still dancing. The players have to look at the players and assign them some blame as well. It's okay. We love these players, which is why we can believe them when they come out after a game and say that they didn't perform to the level that's required. It's okay to believe that. It's okay to respect that. That's not turning our backs on the players. That's not saying you're a Berhalter defender. That's saying that accountability should be assigned to the people that need it. And the players need it at times. And we should be real when we say that sometimes our players have a bad game. Doesn't mean the next one is going to be bad. Doesn't mean we won't be right back out there supporting them, because we obviously will. But the fan base as a whole needs to have a collective get real session about what they realistically want with the program, and to understand that our reaction to a lot of this has been incendiary and outlandish. Blame has been laid at the feet of Matt Crocker too. And that's just because that comes with a job. He made the rehire of Gregg Berhalter, so if a change is required, he has to accept a fair share of this blame. Listen, it's hard to hire a coach, particularly for a national team like ours that has a complicated system that isn't shared by much of the rest of the world. It's even harder when your pick is compared to every coach under the sun, with fans being unrealistic in the federation's pursuit or perceived lack of pursuit of high-profile candidates who very easily could have quietly told the federation that they were not interested. Just because Zinedine Zidane or Jurgen Klopp are available doesn't necessarily mean that they want the job or want to take a huge discount to do it. If we fire Gregg Berhalter, we have to be realistic about who we could get to take the job with less than 2 years before what could be the biggest sporting event in the history of the world. You cannot expect Pep Guardiola to leave Manchester City, where he reportedly makes close to $22 million, to take the U.S. men's national team job just because you saw him at a Celtics game. Jurgen Klopp made $26 million at Liverpool, plus almost the same in sponsorships. He also left Liverpool because he needed a break. It's not realistic for anyone to think that on one phone call he's going to jump across the pond to take the $2 million a year that Gregg Berhalter is currently making, or 3 or 5, or even if you get him up to $10 million. He may really need a break. And that money gap is substantial. Sure, you may try to make the call, but some of these calls are going to end with polite declines. In the end, you don't know who we could end up with. We could end up with an MLS guy to take over for what many call the MLS guy, despite the fact that he's the only coach to put out an all-European lineup, an all-top 5 European League lineup, and an all-European roster. We could end up with a pick not viewed as the sexy hire, and if we do, will you still be mad? If so, you got to figure out what you're mad about, because the source of your anger really wasn't Gregg Berhalter. This review of the program, it's not just about whether we need to fire the coach or revamp the player pool or make some changes at U.S. Soccer headquarters. It's about everything. The fans, the media, myself, all of us should be under review, and all of us should do the reviewing. Don't just look outward, look inward, because if Gregg Berhalter goes and you were mad about him being there in the first place, then you need to figure out how to be happy about the new hire and how you can improve your support of this team. because these next 2 years are going to fly by, and we all need to be on board with any changes to the menu. So yes, it's time to make a change in a lot of areas. It's time to really hold everyone accountable, because we cannot waste this cycle. It's too important to the future of this soccer-crazed nation we call the United States of America. We'll see what U.S. Soccer's program review brings us and whether it means the end of Gregg Berhalter's tenure as national team head coach. But at the end, we cannot waste this cycle. That will do it for episode 137 of the USA Soccer Cast. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to follow us on Twitter, and we're on YouTube as well. Find us on both at USA Soccercast. Subscribe, rate, and review our episodes. It really helps and is greatly appreciated. Don't forget, we have affiliate programs with a ton of places to get you the gear you love and help you to travel to see your favorite teams play or watch them from the comfort of your home. Head to our Linktree, linktree.com/USA Soccercast to learn more. Click the links to all of those sites and support the show in the process. We also have our stimulus store, so we got all the gear you need to be ready for the summer of soccer, so you should get on it. We'll talk to you again soon, y'all. Peace.